If you love intense stories where one unexpected person steps into a dangerous world and changes everything, this one will stay with you. Before you dive in, take a second. Subscribe, follow, or save this story, because what begins as a quiet job in a corner cafe will spiral into power, loyalty, blood, and a choice that could burn an empire to the ground. Now, let's begin. The first rule of survival in Seoul's underworld was simple: don't be seen unless you're meant to be feared. Mina Cole had never heard that rule. She didn't know rules like that existed. She only knew the rules of exhaustion: double shifts, aching feet, polite smiles that hurt her cheeks, and the unspoken understanding that as a black waitress in a city that never quite decided what to do with her presence, she was safest when she stayed invisible. That night, invisibility failed her. The cafe sat beneath an old office building in Gangnam, its windows tinted just enough to hide the men inside from the street. Mina had worked there for 6 months, long enough to memorize the rhythm of late night customers. Businessmen pretending not to be drunk. Couples pretending not to be breaking up. Men who spoke softly but tipped too much, as if money could erase attention. She noticed the silence before she noticed them. 6 men, all dressed simply. Black coats, clean shoes, no unnecessary movement. They sat at the long table in the back, where the security cameras angled blurred faces, just enough to be useless. Mina felt it in her stomach first. The same instinct she'd learned as a kid in Chicago. The one that told her when a street corner wasn't safe, when laughter had teeth in it. She brought water without being asked. The man at the center looked up. He wasn't old, but his presence carried weight, like a storm that didn't need to announce itself. His hair was dark, brushed back with careless precision. His face was calm in a way that suggested violence had already happened elsewhere and would happen again. Park Joon-seo. She didn't know his name yet, but Sil did. "Coffee," he said in Korean, voice low. "No sugar." No's eyes lingered on her for half a second longer than necessary. Not curiosity. Calculation. "Yes," Mina replied, fluent but accented. She turned before he could say anything else. She told herself not to look back. She failed. When she returned with the coffee, the conversation at the table had shifted. Voices were lower now, clipped. Words like shipment, port, and delays slid between sips like they were ordinary complaints. One of the men laughed, sharp and humorless. "That's what happens when you trust family." The word family landed wrong. Mina placed the cup down carefully, but her hand shook just enough for the porcelain to clink against the saucer. Every head turned. The sound felt loud enough to echo. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, bowing her head. "I'll clean." "Leave it," Seo said. His tone wasn't kind. It wasn't cruel either. It was final. Mina nodded and stepped back, heart pounding. She should have walked away. Instead, one of the men at the table reached for the cup, misjudged the distance, and knocked it over. Coffee spilled. Dark, hot, across the table and onto Joon-seo's coat. The room froze. Mina didn't think. She moved. "I'm so sorry," she said, grabbing napkins, blotting at the spill. Her fingers brushed the expensive fabric. She felt the tension roll off the men like heat. One of them stood. "Don't touch him," he snapped. Joon-seo raised a hand. "It's fine." The man hesitated, then sat back down. Mina finished cleaning, hands steady now, instinct kicking in. She didn't apologize again. She didn't beg. She met Joon-seo's eyes briefly, professionally, and stepped away. That was the moment. Later, Mina would understand that power often noticed defiance disguised as competence. When the men left, the cafe felt hollowed out like air after an explosion. Mina leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. Her manager emerged from the back, pale. "Did you know who that was?" He whispered. "No," she said truthfully. He stared at her like she'd just confessed to dancing with fire. That was Park Joon-seo. The name meant nothing to her. "He runs the Southern Network." The manager continued. "You don't interrupt men like that. Ever." Mina shrugged, exhaustion winning over fear. "I was doing my job." That night, She went home to her tiny apartment, reheated leftover rice, and called her mother in the States. She didn't mention the men. She didn't mention the feeling that something had shifted. 3 days later, a black sedan waited outside the cafe when her shift ended. The driver stepped out first, suit crisp, eyes scanning. "Mina Cole?" he asked, her chest tightened.
Yes?
"Mr. Park would like to speak with you." Every instinct screamed no. "What if I say no?" she asked. The driver smiled without warmth. "Then Mr. Park will respect your decision." The pause said otherwise. The ride was silent. Sill blurred past the windows, neon and concrete and secrets stacked on top of each other. They stopped at a private club Mina had passed 100 times without noticing. Inside, Joon-seo waited alone. "Sit," he said. She did. "I don't usually invite strangers," he began. "Especially ones who hear things they shouldn't." "I didn't hear anything," Mina said. A corner of his mouth lifted. "You heard enough." She swallowed. "If this is about the coffee." "It isn't." He leaned back. "It's about you." Mina felt anger spark beneath the fear. "I didn't ask to be noticed." "No." He agreed. "That's why you're interesting." Silence stretched. "I need someone," he continued, "who can move through rooms unnoticed. Someone people underestimate. Someone who doesn't belong to my world." "And you think that's me?" she asked. "I know it is." "For what?" she pressed. "For now," he said calmly, "to serve drinks at private events. Nothing illegal. You'll be paid triple your current wage." She laughed softly. "You think money fixes this?" "I think survival does." That word again. Mina stared at him, seeing past the polished calm to something colder beneath. She understood, suddenly, that refusing him might not be dangerous immediately. But accepting him would be. "What happens if I quit?" she asked. "You won't," he said, not a threat. A fact. When she left the club that night, contract unsigned but card in her pocket, Mina knew her life had tilted off its axis. She told herself she'd say no. She told herself she'd walk away. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had already stepped into the shadow, and shadows, once entered, don't let go easily. The waitress hasn't even seen the real face of the Korean Mafia yet. And the man watching her is about to make a mistake that will cost blood, loyalty, and everything he built. Mina woke the next morning to the shrill cry of her alarm and the pounding echo of the previous night's words. Shadows don't let go. Her apartment felt smaller somehow, corners sharper, air heavier. She pressed her face into the pillow and tried to convince herself it had been a mistake, a fleeting encounter with someone who wielded power like a weapon. By the time she got to the cafe, Sill was already awake and unforgiving. She moved through the familiar aisles, taking orders, balancing trays, hiding the flutter in her chest. The cafe was a haven by day. But she carried the storm she'd stepped into, tucked neatly under her apron. The black card in her pocket burned against her thigh with every step. She hadn't called him, hadn't answered any texts. She was determined to hold her independence. That independence was the only thing she had left, but independence, she learned quickly, had a price. It came the next night. A note slipped under the cafe door. "You have a choice. Meet me, 8 o'clock. Gorosu Gil." 8 o'clock came too fast. By then, she'd cycled through excuses, rationalizations, and a deep, gnawing fear she refused to name. Mina knew her instincts weren't wrong, they had never been wrong. But the pull was stronger than any warning. Curiosity, survival, and something she didn't yet understand. A feeling that fate was watching her with sharp eyes. The club in Gorosu Gil wasn't like the one she had seen before. This one was quieter, dimly lit. The kind of place where secrets stayed hidden behind velvet curtains and the soft hum of jazz. She was led into a back room. Joon-seo was there, already seated, his presence commanding without effort. He looked like someone who could freeze time and bend it to his will. "I see you decided to come," he said. Mina's fingers tightened around her clutch. "I need to know what this is about." He smiled faintly. almost approvingly. You want control. That's good. I respect control. She tilted her head. I'm not your whatever you want me to be. No, he said, eyes darkening. You're the one who will make me reconsider what I thought I wanted. You have perspective and discretion, and a certain audacity. Mina didn't flinch, though her heart thumped. You're describing qualities, not a person. I am a person. And that, he said softly, leaning forward, is why you will be valuable. He outlined the role carefully. She would work as his liaison in the public sphere, someone who could move unnoticed among his enemies, someone others would underestimate. At first, it seemed innocuous. Drinks at events, introductions, small favors. But beneath it pulsed a current Mina couldn't ignore. Every word he spoke carried a subtle warning the wrong move, and this world could devour her without hesitation. I won't lie to you, he said. It's dangerous. I know, she said. And she did. She understood danger in a way most people in this city didn't, but even knowing didn't ease the tremor that ran through her spine. The first event came within a week. A private dinner for politicians and businessmen, high stakes wrapped in champagne and silk. Mina's role was simple: serve drinks, observe, report, easy. Except the room was thick with tension, every glance like a blade. Mina's skin, dark and smooth, stood out against the pale faces, yet no one expected her to notice anything. That invisibility became her weapon. Joon-seo watched from across the room, silent and calculating. Mina felt his eyes like gravity. Every subtle tilt of her head, every measured smile, every quiet note of observation was a thread he tracked. But she didn't realize how much he depended on her until she noticed it herself. Her role was more than service. It was survival, intelligence, influence. By the end of the night, Mina had cataloged 3 potential threats, 2 untrustworthy allies, and a misdirection that could unravel months of planning. When she reported back, Joon-seo didn't praise her. Instead, he let the silence stretch between them like a measuring tape. You understand more than I thought, he finally said. Mina didn't smile. I observe. That's all. But observing, he said, standing close enough that she could feel the cold precision of his presence, is what keeps you alive in my world. Her pulse raced. She had survived Chicago streets and men who underestimated her in every step of life. But this was different. This was a chessboard where every piece could kill. Days turned into weeks. Mina's life transformed. The cafe became irrelevant. Her apartment felt like a temporary pause between battles. She learned how to read the subtle language of men who wielded power without speaking. A glance, a twitch, a sip of tea. It could signal allegiance, betrayal, or death. She also learned the shadows beneath Joon-seo's eyes. He was more than a mob boss. He was a man haunted by choices, by loyalty, by betrayals that ran deep. Mina understood that even power carried vulnerability, and it fascinated her. She didn't feel sympathy. Sympathy was a luxury. But she felt the edge of something more dangerous: understanding. She saw the man behind the empire and wondered what he might become if someone like her, someone unpredictable, touched his carefully contained life. Her first mistake, or perhaps her first proof of audacity, came when she intervened in a dispute between 2 of his lieutenants. Both men underestimated her. She walked between them, voice calm, presence steady. "Nuff," she said, in English first, then Korean. "This ends now." They froze. The taller one laughed nervously. "Who? You?" she interrupted, pointing to the second man. "And you. Both of you are risking the wrong man's patience for pride. Step back. Both of you." Silence fell. Joon-seo watched from the corner. No one had ever spoken to his men like that. And no one had ever survived after speaking. The men stepped back. Joon-seo's gaze followed her the entire time. There was no praise in it. No relief. Just observation. But something shifted. Something subtle. A recalibration of how the world could perceive power. And who wielded it. Mina's reputation grew within the shadows, though she remained unaware of the whispers that began in the dimly lit corners of Joon-seo's empire. She was the black waitress. The one who didn't belong. The one who had survived an entire room of enemies without flinching. And that alone made her dangerous. Then came the night that changed everything. It started as a routine pickup. A shipment delay at the port. Mina had been asked to accompany Joon-seo, ostensibly for presence. But she knew better. When they arrived, the quiet tension of the dock suggested a lie waiting to be revealed. Shadows shifted between containers, and Mina caught the glint of a knife before Joon-seo even reacted. "You see," he said, voice low. "Everything matters." A fight erupted suddenly. Men she couldn't count charged. Guns fired. The air was thick with the smell of oil and salt, with screams that made Mina's teeth clench. She froze for a fraction of a second. A mistake. And then she moved. Years of survival instincts collided with newly honed skills. She ducked, twisted, grabbed a dropped gun, and fired into the air. Not to kill, never that, but to assert presence. The attackers faltered. Joon-seo moved like liquid, lethal and precise. Mina realized in that moment that she had not only survived but contributed. Her presence wasn't ornamental. It was essential. After the attackers fled, Joon-seo examined her, silence heavy between them. "You," he began, paused. "You saved time I didn't expect." Mina's chest heaved. "I didn't know what else to do." "No," he said, voice soft but edged with steel. "You knew exactly what to do." That night, the truth settled between them like smoke. She was no longer an outsider. She had stepped into the shadow fully, and the shadow had accepted her. But acceptance came at a cost. She saw it in Joon-seo's eyes. The constant calculation, the lingering threat, the understanding that proximity to him was a gamble. One misstep, one careless action, and the world that had begun to feel dangerous would become lethal. And yet, for the first time, Mina felt alive in a way that survival in anonymity had never allowed. She belonged, though perhaps she didn't fully understand what that belonged to. Loyalty was a currency, and she had just been tested, and passed. Days after the dock incident, Joon-seo summoned her to his office. The city sprawled behind the floor, to ceiling windows, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out within it. Mina noticed how he stared at the skyline, how his hands rested on the polished desk. Then he looked at her. "You've changed things," he said simply. "People underestimate you. That's dangerous. For them, not for you." She nodded. "I only survive." "That's not enough anymore," he said. "You influence more than survival now. Decisions are being made because of your presence." Mina's mind raced. Influence. Decisions. She had only been trying to survive. "And," he continued, voice dropping lower, "I'm beginning to realize that I cannot protect you the way I once thought I could." Mina felt the weight of that statement. Protection was temporary. The shadow was permanent. But she also felt something else. An unspoken trust forming in the space between them. Trust built from necessity, from skill, from a dangerous mutual understanding that neither could fully articulate. Mina didn't smile. She never smiled at Joon-seo. Not in the traditional sense. But she allowed herself a small recognition of reality. She was no longer a waitress. She was a force in a world built on force. And that power, borrowed or earned, would come at a cost she didn't yet see. The night ended quietly. They walked out together into the cold seal air, side by side. The world unaware of the collision between the ordinary and the lethal that had just occurred. Mina breathed in the city, feeling its pulse, feeling her own heartbeat align with its rhythm. For the first time, she accepted her place. Not fully, but enough to survive another day, and perhaps another challenge. And somewhere deep, she realized that the next challenge would be the hardest. Shadows could protect. Shadows could hide, but shadows could also demand payment in ways she could never anticipate. The stage is set. Mina has stepped fully into the Korean Mafia's world, survived her first real threat, and begun to claim influence. But danger grows, enemies notice, and trust is a dangerous luxury. The city never slept, and neither did the shadows Mina had entered. Each night brought a new tension, a new calculation, a new test of survival. But nothing had prepared her for the storm that came without warning. An attack not at a dock, not in a private room, but in the one place she thought was safe, Joon-seo's private office. It began with a whisper of movement behind her as she arranged papers on his desk. The door clicked almost imperceptibly, and she turned, just in time to see a figure drop from the ceiling light. Reflexes honed from months of survival kicked in. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy brass paperweight, and swung, connecting with the man's shoulder. A muted grunt and he went down, but there were more. Always more. Gunfire erupted from the hall. Mina ducked behind the desk, heart hammering. The men who had attacked were not ordinary thieves or rival gang members. They were precise, coordinated, lethal. Her stomach twisted with the knowledge that someone inside Joon-seo's empire had betrayed him. He moved like a ghost, disappearing between the shadows and reappearing at moments that defied logic. Mina watched, stunned, as he neutralized one threat after another, his calm precision terrifying and mesmerizing. She realized, with a flicker of fear, that she was not just witnessing his world. She was a part of it now, whether she wanted to be or not. "Stay down," he barked, voice low but edged with authority. "And keep your head clear." Mina crouched, listening to the sounds of struggle, the metallic clash of weapons, and the distant wail of alarms. She knew what she had to do. Survival wasn't enough anymore. If she wanted to live, if she wanted to protect the fragile trust they had built, she had to act. She moved silently, weaving between overturned furniture and shadows. One of the intruders had a gun aimed directly at Joon-seo, oblivious to her presence. Mina's hands found a loose cord from a nearby lamp. She yanked it, sending the lamp crashing into the man. The sudden distraction was enough. Joon-seo neutralized him in one swift motion. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the attackers were down, groaning on the floor or fleeing into the night. The office reeked of smoke, gunpowder, and adrenaline. Mina sank against the desk, chest heaving, trying to catch her breath. Joon-seo stepped toward her, eyes sharp but not unkind. "You did well," he said, almost quietly. "You saved more than yourself tonight." Mina shook her head. "I just reacted. I didn't know what else to do." "No," he corrected. "You acted. That's the difference. You're no longer just surviving. You're influencing. You're shaping outcomes." A silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. Mina realized, with a shock, that Joon-seo was not praising her. He was acknowledging a transformation that neither of them could fully control. She had crossed a line. She was no longer a mere observer in his empire. She had become a player. Over the next few days, the aftermath of the attack settled into tense normalcy. Security measures were tightened. Trust was scrutinized. Mina moved among the shadows with a new awareness, sensing the whispers that followed her steps. She was the outsider who had survived. The woman who had challenged fate in a world designed to crush her. And then came the confrontation she had been dreading. It was at a high-profile gala, the kind of event where alliances were displayed in tailored suits and diamond necklaces. Mina's role was simple: observe, report, and ensure nothing destabilized Joon-seo's interests. Yet, as soon as she arrived, she sensed it. The eyes on her, calculating, testing, measuring. Across the room, a rival faction leader watched her intently, the same man who had orchestrated the office attack. He didn't recognize her yet, but she recognized him. A calculated smile tugged at her lips. This was her world now. Shadows were her allies. Observation was her weapon. Influence was her currency. Joon-seo approached, his presence anchoring her. "Stay close," he whispered, "and trust yourself." Mina nodded, heart steady. She moved through the crowd, unnoticed but not irrelevant. Every glance, every casual touch, every carefully placed comment she overheard fed into a web of intelligence she could relay back to him. By the end of the night, she had uncovered plans for another attack, mapped out traitors within their ranks, and neutralized a potential scandal before it began. When they finally left the gala, Joon-seo's car glided silently through Seoul's streets. He said nothing for a long while, hands folded on his lap. Mina sat quietly, digesting the night's events, understanding fully that she had irrevocably stepped into a dangerous life. "You've changed things," Joon-seo finally said, voice low and precise. "People see you differently now. They respect you, or fear you, and both are dangerous." Mina glanced at him, eyes steady. "I'm not afraid of the shadows anymore." He studied her, expression unreadable. "You should be. But I see now that you have a strength few possess. And because of that, you're not just surviving. You're making choices. Dangerous choices." She swallowed. "I only choose to survive it." "Survival is a choice," he countered. "But so is loyalty. And so is power. And tonight you've claimed all three, whether you realize it or not." For the first time, Mina felt the weight of what she had become. Not just a waitress. Not just a survivor. Not just a stranger in Seoul. She was a force within an empire that had once seemed impenetrable. And with that force came consequences. Decisions that could shatter lives, alliances, and even her own sense of morality. Weeks later, the city seemed quieter, deceptively calm. Mina moved through Joon-seo's empire with confidence now. Her instincts sharpened, her presence acknowledged but underestimated. She had gained his trust, earned it with precision, courage, and the audacity to survive. But she also knew that trust was fragile. Shadows held secrets. Allies could turn into enemies in a heartbeat. One evening, as they overlooked the Han River from Joon-seo's high-rise office, the city spread before them like a glittering battlefield. Mina leaned against the railing, feeling the cold air on her face, the hum of the metropolis below, and the knowledge that her life had irrevocably changed. "You understand now, don't you?" Joon-seo said, voice soft. "Understand what?" she asked, not turning. "That nothing is given freely in this world. Not power, not loyalty, not survival. Everything is earned, and often paid for in blood or sacrifice." Mina's gaze hardened. "I understand. And I'll survive. No matter the cost." He stepped closer. "Good. Because the next battle is coming. And it will demand more than survival. It will demand choices that define who you are, and who I am." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the city's hum and the unspoken acknowledgement of the bond they had forged. Mina realized that in the shadows, trust and danger walked hand in hand. But she also understood that she had claimed her place, irrevocably. She had stepped into a world of power, violence, and loyalty, and she had survived, changed, and sharpened. That night, as Seoul's lights reflected on the river, Mina allowed herself a quiet thought: shadows could consume, shadows could hide. But shadows could also reveal who she truly was. And Mina Cole, once a black waitress navigating a city that had ignored her, had become unstoppable. If you've felt the intensity, the fear, the power, the courage, don't stop here. Mina's journey reminds us that survival is only the beginning. Influence, loyalty, and audacity are forged in fire, and those who step into the shadows can change the world. Subscribe, follow, or save this story now to never miss more heart-pounding tales of courage, survival, and the people who dare to walk into darkness and come out alive.